A clear way to understand the philosophical stance of your research is to identify the assumptions your study makes about reality, knowledge, values, and research methods. Your philosophical stance, or research paradigm, explains why you chose a particular approach and how you believe knowledge can be created. Here is a step-by-step approach. 1. Identify your research question. What are you trying to understand or explain? Example: does online learning improve student performance? May align with a positivist approach. How do students experience online learning? May align with an interpretivist approach. Examine your assumptions about reality, ontology. Ask, what do I believe about reality? One objective reality exists, positivism. Multiple realities based on people's experiences. Interpretivism. Reality is shaped by social, cultural, or political contexts, critical theory. 3. Examine your assumptions about knowledge. Epistemology. Ask, how can knowledge be obtained? Through observation and measurement, positivism. Through understanding participants' meanings, interpretivism. Through collaboration between researcher and participants. 4. Constructivism. Consider the role of values. Axiology. Ask, can research be value-free? Values should be minimized, positivist. Researcher values and perspectives influence research, interpretivist and critical approaches. 5. Match your methodology. Quantitative methods often align with positivism. Qualitative methods often align with interpretivism or constructivism. Mixed methods often align with pragmatism. The figure summarizes the major research philosophical perspectives by comparing their assumptions about reality, knowledge, and research methods. Positivism assumes a single objective reality and relies on quantitative methods, such as surveys and experiments. Interpretivism views reality as subjective and seeks to understand people's experiences through qualitative methods. Constructivism considers reality to be socially constructed, with knowledge co-created between researchers and participants. Pragmatism emphasizes using the methods that best address the research problem, often through mixed methods. Critical theory focuses on how power and inequality shape reality and promotes research that supports social change. Together, these perspectives help researchers choose an appropriate philosophical foundation for their study. The following examples illustrate how different research topics lead to different philosophical stances. Example 1. Measuring the effect of online learning on student performance. Suppose a researcher wants to investigate whether online learning improves students' examination scores. The researcher believes that student achievement can be measured objectively using numerical data such as test scores and attendance records. Since the researcher assumes that there is a single, objective reality that can be observed and measured, the study adopts a realist or positivist ontology. Knowledge is obtained through observation, measurement, and statistical analysis, reflecting a positivist epistemology. Therefore, a quantitative research design using surveys or experiments is the most appropriate methodology. Example 2. Understanding teachers' experiences with artificial intelligence. Now consider a researcher who wants to explore how teachers experience the use of artificial intelligence in classroom teaching. In this case, the researcher assumes that each teacher may have a different experience and interpretation of AI. Reality is therefore viewed as socially constructed rather than fixed, which reflects a constructivist ontology. Because knowledge is developed by understanding participants' perspectives and meanings, the study adopts an interpretivist epistemology. Qualitative methods such as interviews and thematic analysis are appropriate for this research. Example 3. Exploring how historical monuments shape national identity. Suppose a researcher wants to examine how historical monuments contribute to the construction of national identity in a country. The researcher is interested in understanding how citizens, historians, educators, and policymakers interpret the meanings of these monuments, and how they influence people's sense of belonging and national identity. In this study, The researcher assumes that national identity is not a fixed or objective reality, but is socially and culturally constructed through shared history, symbols, and public interpretation. Therefore, the study adopts a constructivist ontology. Since the aim is to understand people's interpretations, meanings, and lived experiences, rather than measure objective facts, the study is guided by an interpretivist epistemology. To collect rich and meaningful data, the researcher may use in-depth interviews, focus group discussions, document analysis, and observations of heritage sites. The findings would help explain how different groups of people understand and assign meaning to historical monuments in shaping national identity. These examples demonstrate that the philosophical stance of a research study depends on the researcher's assumptions about reality and knowledge. Studies seeking objective measurement typically adopt realism or positivism, while studies exploring people's experiences, meanings, and social constructions usually adopt constructivism and interpretivism. By clearly identifying these assumptions at the beginning of the research process, researchers can ensure that their research questions, methodology, and methods are philosophically consistent and academically rigorous.